This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for. Justin Ostrander just uploaded in the last sort of 24 hours a really important, I think, video, sort of 25-minute chatting to the camera about kind of the mistake that I think definitely I've fallen into this before, where you basically dial in, or it feels like everything sounds the same. You're dialing things in. It's like, well, can I really tell the difference when I plug in a Strat or a Tele? And this is definitely not something I feel like my ears are very well attuned to at all. You know, like an isolated track that was played on a Tele versus on a Strat versus on a Les Paul or a 335. I don't think that I've got a particularly good ear attuned to any of those, like picking those things out of a lineup. Now, I think there's significant tonal overlap, but then Justin's also talking about this additional aspect. Definitely watch his video. I don't want to just parrot it. I want to sort of just try some of these things, but you should definitely watch Justin's video. I think it's really great when folks that are working on records in Nashville in this kind of way are able to share some of these tips about dialing bits and pieces in. Justin's provided lots of useful stuff. Just last week I was, you know, trying some of his tips with a Deluxe Reverb. So yeah, do check that out. Now, here's a thing for me. So I'm coming predominantly from single coil world, and so most of the things that I am used to doing is, if anything, dialing back the brightness of a guitar to some extent. Whether that's also using a modeler helps or doesn't help in that regard, in that sometimes, you know, you dial in quite a bit of gain and then it's like, right, well, I need to tame the highs, just use a high cut. So when it comes to something like a Deluxe Reverb or other amps as well, you know, quite often I'm turning that treble down from 5 down to 3. You know, you kind of start at 5 as a base point, but then you dial it back. And then you plug in a Les Paul or an ES335, and sometimes it's kind of like then very woolly. What Justin said, amongst a bunch of other things that you should definitely check out, was to actually do the opposite and dial in the amp to work with your like neck pickup of a Les Paul or neck pickup of a ES335, and then jump onto it with a Strat. And based on that advice, what I'd kind of done was taken this Deluxe Reverb. I got the volume on 6. We're going into a load box because, you know, life. But I got the bass down to 5 and the treble down to 6. And that was what I kind of had for that intro. And I felt like I was hearing differences between those guitars to a greater extent than usual. You obviously have the ice pick. And also he was kind of talking about like stacking pedals and all of that sort of stuff. And this is another area where he's kind of saying this can get basically caught in the gravitational pull of what you're trying to achieve, to the point where maybe you're then obscuring some of the differences. So all I've got here now on the floor is an Archer kind of basically set clean and just boosting. Treble to halfway. So neck pickup. Bit woollier on the Tele. And then bridge. Really hearing the differences between the guitars in that way. Because what I'm not doing is going into a signal chain full of other kind of augmentation devices, drive pedals stacked and all that sort of stuff, and instead going into a little bit of a brighter tone than I would usually, per Justin's recommendation, and just kind of then playing and seeing what happens. And all I've got going on from the load box is just going into the normal cab I use, but with the high cut all the way open and like a little bit of reverb. And you're hearing, for me, I'm hearing differences in these guitars that generally I'm not hearing. So I definitely needed to hear this. Some of these differences might not be things that you like, but at least you're getting a kind of a more accurate representation, so you're then able to select the right guitar for whatever the vibe is that you're going for, if that makes sense. And for me, now I'm hearing more clearly the voice of a Strat, the voice of a Tele, the voice and characteristics of a Les Paul than I would be if I was just doing my normal kind of thing. So maybe this could be like a interesting starting point for building tones instead of other methods. Yeah, so definitely go check out Justin's channel and his latest video. I think it's a absolute banger of a video, and it might help you, you know, if you're feeling like all of your tones sound the same, or you're someone else who's thinking like, do I have to dial in things to sound different with different guitars? There is this other approach, which is kind of let the guitar be the voice that the guitar is. And one of the ways that we can help identify that voice of the guitar, having that amp a little bit brighter, using maybe less pedals to start off with, and getting back to a more closely to a guitar to the amp type of approach. And that could definitely work in modeling as well. So worth a think about that, like in Helix land, in Fractal land as well. Just stripping things back a bit as a starting point, and then adding them back in once you're already kind of thinking, well, yeah, that is the voice of the Strat, and then bringing those back in, maybe.